And now we have Gorgeous George from MMA Junkie podcast talking to us about UFC 286, the main event, the fight we've been waiting almost a year for, the rematch between Kamaru Usman, the former champion of the welterweight division and the current champion of the welterweight division as well. It's going to be an exciting fight, and I just had a miss. It's Edwards, Leon Edwards, who is the middleweight champion. Sorry for that.
Welterweight champion.
Yeah, welterweight champion. I'm getting that again. I'm getting that out of my mind. But yeah, welterweight champion Leon Edwards. See all the pictures I have up right here. I have the welterweight. I had the former welterweight champion, the current bantamweight champion, and now this is the former women's flyweight champion.
You've jinxed him by putting him on your wall.
Well, he's still the champion.
Mm-hmm.
Aljamain is. Yeah. I don't think I don't. Anything can happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, this is going to be a great fight, and so this is the trilogy bout between Usman and Edwards. Edwards defending his title for the first time against Usman. Usman was going for his sixth title defense when he lost to Edwards in the 5th round last August. If you recall, he was pretty much, I would say, dominating the fight. I think that's fair to say. And in round 5, Edwards landed that head kick. Yeah. Beautiful, man, thundering, and everybody keeps saying, you're not the same after you've been knocked out so viciously like that. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to get in Usman's head. Maybe you're not the same in that. Sure, I guess your confidence might be shaken up a little bit. That is a big KO he took. But I mean, Usman also won like 16 times without losing. So you don't have to, if you look at his record, or if he looks at his own record, it ain't going to take him a long time to realize he's a bad mofo, And if he rewatches the fight, I think he's going to realize, holy cow, like I was cruising to victory here.
Yep.
And credit to Leon Edwards, he set that up really, really nicely by kind of doing some feints and parrying and getting Usman to maybe bite on that and occupy the hand he should have used to block Edwards' kick. It was really, really nicely done. Edwards also had a nice takedown or two. I know at least 2 attempts, but one completely got him. And I think Usman was one of the fighters that had never been taken out or taken down or rarely been taken down. So a lot of that was a little bit psychological, I think, and it was big for Edwards. But that said, again, in the 5th round, he was losing the fight. He was on his way to losing the fight.
Yeah.
Until that kick. Now, this will be different. They won't be at altitude.
Mm-hmm.
Usman's comfortable with altitude because he trains in Denver, Colorado, and that fight was in Salt Lake City. Both cities that reside in that 5,000 foot level. This one's in London, England. So this is a little bit more of a home game for Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards is about 3 hours north, I think, by train in Birmingham. But still, it's his home country. That country supports its athletes. It's going to be rocking and rolling. He's now been able to beat Kamaru Usman, so he obviously knows he's just a human. He's not a superhero. But I still think you'd be foolish to not go with Usman.
Yeah,
I mean, he was really, really just taking this guy out with the wrestling, with the striking. I don't know, man. I favor Usman in this one, and I'm gonna stick with him. If Edwards wins, I could accept that, but Usman's like minus 245, 250 for a reason. Edwards comes back at 205, 200, and I think that reason is because, again, that fight before getting caught, it was really, really great performance from Kamaru Usman. It would have been his 6th title defense, and he was the #1 pound for pound fighter. Like, he was doing so many great things. He was on the verge of breaking Anderson Silva's record for most consecutive UFC wins.
And then he also would have been able to keep on reaching and break a GSP record, or did he break GSP's record? I don't think
it's interesting you bring that up because GSP's record is 9 title defenses.
Okay.
And Usman had been saying, and those that supported Usman were saying, hey, this is the greatest welterweight of all time. I kept telling people, pump the brakes, because these title defenses means you're usually facing the next best guy than you.
Right.
And there's something to be said for that, you know. So because the modern game is more competitive, I tend to let the younger fighters not have to basically equal that record or break the
Right.
record for me to say, yeah, it's this guy now. Usman had one less loss. GSP had 2. But Usman was on his 5th title defense. GSP had 9. Usman was about to get his 6th. I kept saying, I think if Usman can get to 7 title defenses, maybe I'm at the point where I can say, yeah, man, I think he might have even surpassed GSP, even though he would have lost in the title defense category. He would have had a better record, more consecutive streak.
And the stats of
subjective anyway. But he didn't get that far. You know what I mean? Another thing that hurt Usman, I think, too, was of his 5 title defenses, 2 were against Colby and 2 were against Masvidal. So he wasn't really cleaning out the division per se.
Yeah.
He had only beaten 3 cats along that way: Burns, Covington, and Masvidal. He did really well against Masvidal, but against Covington, he had to dig deep. The first fight, Covington was up 2 rounds to nothing. And then Usman comes back and breaks his jaw and wins the fight. And then in the second fight, they kind of went back and forth, and once again, round 5 decided it. So he had to dig deep against Colby Covington, but now it's a whole different thing. Now he's got to fight Leon Edwards, and this will be his trilogy match. GSP had one of those against Matt Hughes. So we'll see. He can still catch and pass GSP, but for right now, GSP secures the #1 welterweight ever.
For sure. And deservedly so. I have to go with Usman on this because, like, everything you saw in the first fight, he really exposed Edwards and really showed that he can smash him, he can do damage, and every round was his for the taking. But again, he got caught, and so that's all that people are going to remember for this past 8 months. He got caught, that's all people are going to remember him for. So he has to go out and prove to the world that no, he's not going to get caught a second time, because that's what everybody is expecting in the back of their heads. And I think he's going to do it. I think he could come out with a finish on Leon Edwards as well. So I think there's a multiple, different scenarios where Usman really can find this Leon Edwards on the end of his punches and drop him. Not only drop him, but really just damage him. Like, you could actually stop a fighter from damage without knocking him out, right? We've seen that happen so many times, like, cuts and bleeding. And the fight has to be stopped. Usman has the option to do that. He's so strong, especially those hands. So we can look to win in a variety of ways.
For sure, yeah. And what he needs to do is, I think, there's going to be these little mini battles throughout the night, because I know Edwards and his team are going to push that angle of he's been knocked out viciously. Can he come back from that? Mm-hmm. Is his chin going to be the same? And those are all valid questions. Those are all valid forms of trash talk to get into someone's head. But what happens when Edwards does hit Usman and Usman looks right back at him and goes, I'm here, right. I'm here. You got to deal with me. Like, that's one scenario. The other scenario is, what if Edwards just touches him along the way and Usman's on shaky legs? That's going to be in Usman's head. Right. Like, oh boy, like maybe there is something to this whole, the chin might be starting to go or whatever. That happened to GSP, man. When GSP got knocked out by Matt Serra, man, for the next 5 years, everybody used to question GSP's chin, when that was really the only time he had ever been knocked out. Right. Because Hughes had submitted him with an armbar. Had he been rocked? Yeah. But that was the only time he had been knocked out. But the questions remain: GSP's chin, GSP's chin, GSP's chin. Right. Even Andre Arlovsky, he took a couple nice ones, and it took maybe like 10 years for people to go, oh, I guess he can still take a punch. And he still can take a punch. Andre Arlovsky's still rocking and rolling. But sometimes they can just stick with you, and I don't blame Edwards for pushing that. But I think we got to give Usman a little bit more credit. It was a clean kick. It landed in the 5th round. They were exhausted, and boom, he went out. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden he's on wobbly legs to start the fight.
No, not at all. I think this is going to be a very competitive fight too. I hope it is. I hope it's different than the first one, where Usman was, I think, right. Usman clearly had 4 rounds in leading up to the 5th round. Would you say he had 4 rounds in his corner?
I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say this, Sean. Even though I'm taking Usman, I won't bet Usman. I'm just gonna enjoy it. I don't want to
Yeah.
drop minus 250 because I think the fight's a little closer than that, especially with Edwards being at home.
Yeah.
And but I will say this: the division is a little more fresh if Edwards continues to win. Why do I say that? Because Usman again had already kind of knocked out a few fighters. Like there's nothing for Colby Covington to do other than just
Right.
pick a fight somewhere, right? But
Mhm.
it really opens things up if Edwards wins, and it's going to be interesting because Edwards, I know, wants to avenge 3-piece Minnesota.
Right.
Masvidal wins at UFC 287, which is about 3 weeks after this event on Saturday. I mean, tell me that the UFC is gonna really want to rebook that. But first, Masvidal's got to get past Burns. But I could see Edwards wanting that, and then I think all of a sudden you might see the return of Colby Covington because he won't have 2 losses versus the current champ
Right.
the way he did with Usman. I think Gilbert Burns and Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's obviously flying. I don't know if Shemaev's going to drop back down. I think he's just a big dude. I don't know if he's
Mhm.
going to do it, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting. Steven Thompson, Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal. There's just so many possibilities out
Bilal.
there. Bilal, how could I forget Bilal Muhammad?
Mhm.
Exactly.
He
You
has
know
a.
what? Is he the backup, or have you heard who the backup might be?
I didn't hear if he was traveling. I thought he has a fight scheduled, I believe, right? Let me check.
Hmm.
I usually have him on Facebook, so I keep him on, like I always see him posting his upcoming fights. And he has a fight coming up. No, he just beat Sean Brady, so he doesn't have a fight coming up. So I didn't hear that he was the backup at all, but
I wonder if he is the backup. Sometimes that backup status is really secretive.
right.
Like I believe, what was it? Sergey Pavlovich was the backup for Gane versus Jones.
Hmm.
So I hadn't really heard stuff like, oh, he's been spotted around town or anything like that. Just out of nowhere, we were told he's the backup, and I had no problem with it. And I could see I'd have no problem with Bully being the backup here. But yeah, how could I forget Bully? He definitely is in the running. But again, no disrespect to Usman. If he wins, who I predict him to win, he wins, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But Leon Rocky Edwards winning, I think, just kind of revitalizes the division a little.
Yeah. Either one would be a tough fight for Bilal. Because Bilal, unfortunately, how the first fight with Edwards went. So I think it's
here's the thing. Bilal, man, he keeps plugging holes. What do I mean by
right.
that? Just kind of what I was talking earlier. I didn't think Bilal was going to stand with Vicente Luque that long. Vicente Luque's got really nice hands, good boxing.
Yeah.
And yet Bilal, he got away from the wrestling and he decided to throw some hands. He proved a point that night. We know he can wrestle, but now we know he can throw some hands, and we know he's got power. Finally he got himself a finish. I don't know how much the Khabib factor was. I don't know if he's going to continue to work with Khabib because Khabib pulled away from coaching altogether, but maybe still being part of that camp, or I don't know. But either way, I just love the way that guy's improved. So maybe about a year ago or 6 months ago, I would have thought, you know what, Sean, I think you're spot on. I don't think Bilal's got something for these guys. But after this last fight,
Mhm.
I'm starting to think he might have something for both
Yeah.
Usman and Edwards in a title fight.
Well, I think he does. I think he has a lot to offer. I just said they're two tough competitors.
Oh yeah.
I still think I'm pulling for Bilal, Chicago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's got a lot of personality too, man. I
Yeah.
really love
Yes.
Bilal. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great guy. I got to see him at the Bellator fights. So if you look at the way these two match up, how do you feel it's going to play out?
I think Usman's gonna win, and I think he's gonna win via ground and pound.
Mhm.
Once he gets you down, he just is a terror, right?
Yeah.
So I could see him winning that way. I mean, look, he's got one punch power. He proved that against
Right.
Masvidal. He's broken Colby Covington's jaw. I get that, but I think in this route, it will weigh on his mind, that KO. And I think one way to get away from that is to put someone on their ass, put someone on their back, and beat them up that way, you know. And then as the fight progresses, and you're realizing, hey, I'm okay. The crowd's out of it. I've racked up a round or two. Then maybe you start throwing some hands if you get to round 3 and you see some openings. But otherwise, I just say wrestle. I think John Jones was very, very smart in what he did. He's always kickboxed ever since DC won in 2015. He hasn't really wrestled. But if you remember, they were arguing about who's going to get someone, who the better wrestler is, and this and that or whatever. And he made it a point to wrestle with DC. But then after that, he's really been more of a kickboxer. And that's what I was expecting against Cyril Gahn. Next thing you know, he's wrestling. So, and I think fighters watch these trends, and they know, hey, you know what? I'm just going to do what he did. I might not get that KO and that highlight on ESPN, but my hands raised and I got the belt.
For sure. I'm going with Kamaru Usman as well. I'm not sure if he's going to get the finish or decision. I just have his hand raised, and regain that welterweight championship will be nice. Yeah, I'm with you. I got Usman. Go USA. Right?
Oh yeah. I love the Brits. I love the Brits. Nothing against them, but yeah, I'm gonna root for USA on this one.
Well, George, I appreciate you being on. Again, the Fightlete Report. And thank you for viewing this 2-part series at the main event, co-main event 286, UFC 286, which is this Saturday. And please plug MMA Junkie podcast.
Thank you. So MMA Junkie drops Mondays and Thursdays on our website, MMAJunkie.com. You can also go to your favorite podcast platform and grab it there. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Omni, whatever it is. Also, Goze and I, my co-host and younger brother, we are featured in Spinning Backclick, a video franchise that started a few years ago, where we cover the latest news. It's on Mondays live at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a nice little chat room so you can be a part of the show and ask questions or leave comments. Check that out. You can go to our YouTube page for that, youtube.com/MMA Junkie Video. And again, thank you, Sean, for having me on the Fightlete Report. Anytime you need me, you know you can always holla.
All right. Appreciate you, George. Enjoy the fights. And check out Gorgeous George MMA Junkie Radio and their UFC fight podcast. UFC 286, you're going to be do a live broadcast, right?
We will be doing the watch along. That's right. Saturday, noon Pacific, and 3 p.m. Eastern. And Sean, don't forget to turn in your March Madness pool.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, George. Take care.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.